Hey everyone, welcome back to English in Fluency, the podcast where we help you understand real English, the kind people actually speak every day, not just the kind you find in textbooks. I'm your host, Alex, and I am so glad you're here with me today. Today we're diving into something that every single English learner asks me about all the time. And that question is, why can I understand my textbook audio perfectly, but when I talk to a real person, or I watch a movie, or I listen to a podcast like this one, I suddenly feel completely lost? Does that sound familiar to you? If it does, you are in exactly the right place. Because today's episode is all about listening to real people speak naturally. And I'm going to walk you through exactly why natural speech sounds so different, and more importantly, I'm going to give you real examples, real conversations, and real practice, so that by the end of this episode, you'll feel a little more confident every time you step into the real world of English. Let's start with the big question. Why is natural speech so hard to understand? Think about it this way. When you learn English from a textbook or from a language app, the audio is usually recorded slowly. Every word is pronounced clearly. There are pauses between words. The grammar is perfect. But real people don't talk like that. Real people are busy. They're relaxed. They're thinking about what they want to say while they're already saying something else. And because of that, natural speech is full of shortcuts. We drop sounds. We connect words together. We use filler words like and like and you know. We speak fast. And we don't always finish our sentences the way a textbook would. This is completely normal. It happens in every language. Not just English. But for learners, especially at the B1 level, this can feel overwhelming, because suddenly the English you studied for months doesn't match the English you're hearing in real life. So today, I want to give you some tools. I want to break down some real conversations for you, piece by piece, so you can start to hear the patterns that native speakers use without even thinking about it. And I want you to really listen closely, because throughout this episode, I'm going to give you natural examples. And after each one, I'm going to say repeat, so you can pause the episode, or just say it out loud right after me, and practice the rhythm and the sound of real English. This is how you train your ear. This is how you start to close that gap between textbook English and real English. Let's start with something super common. Ordering coffee. Imagine you walk into a coffee shop in the United States, and you hear the barista say something like this. Hey, what can I get started for you today? Notice that. Not, what would you like to order? Which is what a textbook might teach you. But, what can I get started for you today? This is casual, friendly, natural English. Repeat. What can I get started for you today? And maybe you respond. Can I just get a medium latte, please? Notice the word just here. Native speakers use just all the time in requests. It doesn't mean anything extra. It just makes the request sound smaller and more polite. Repeat. Can I just get a medium latte? Please? Then the barista might say, You got it. That'll be $4.50. Now here's something interesting. That'll be is a contraction of that will be. In fast speech, this often sounds like that ill be, all connected together. Almost like one word. Repeat. That'll be $4.50. And you might say, perfect. Thanks so much. Simple, right? But notice how none of this sounds like a textbook dialogue. It's short, it's fast, and it uses casual expressions like, you got it, instead of something more formal like, certainly, or of course. This is the real English you'll hear every single day. And the more you expose yourself to it, the more natural it will start to feel. Let's move to another really common situation: small talk about the weekend. This happens constantly in offices, in schools, at parties, basically everywhere people meet each other. Imagine two co-workers talking on a Monday morning. One says, "Hey, how was your weekend?" Simple enough. Repeat, "Hey, how was your weekend?" The other person might say, "Oh, it was pretty good. I just hung out with some friends. Nothing too crazy." Now let's slow down on this sentence, because it's full of natural expressions. Hung out means spent casual time together. Nothing too crazy means nothing very exciting or unusual happened. These expressions are everywhere in spoken English, but you almost never see them written formally. Repeat, "It was pretty good. I just hung out with some friends. Nothing too crazy." Then maybe the first person responds, "Nice. I ended up staying in and catching up on some shows." Ended up is a really important phrase for you to learn. It means something happened, often without planning it that way. Staying in means staying home instead of going out. And catching up on some shows means watching episodes of a TV series that you missed. Repeat, "I ended up staying in and catching up on some shows." Do you see how much meaning is packed into these short, casual sentences? A textbook conversation might say something like, "I remained at home and watched television programs," but no real person talks that way. Real English is compressed, it's efficient, and it's full of these small expressions that carry a lot of meaning. Let's try one more everyday situation. Asking for directions. This is such a useful skill because even if your vocabulary is limited, you'll need to understand directions when you travel or when you're new to a city. Imagine someone stops a stranger on the street and asks, "Excuse me, do you know how to get to the train station from here?" Repeat, "Excuse me, do you know how to get to the train station from here?" The stranger might answer, "Yeah, for sure. So you're going to want to go straight down this street, and then take a left at the light." Now pay very close attention here, because this sentence has two of the most common reductions in spoken English: gonna and wanna. Gonna is short for going to, and wanna is short for want to. Native speakers use these constantly in casual conversation. You will almost never hear someone say, "You're going to want to go straight," in real life. It will almost always sound like, "You're gonna want to go straight." Repeat, "You're gonna want to go straight down this street." And then, take a left at the light means turn left when you reach the traffic light. Short, direct, efficient. Repeat, take a left at the light. Now, let's really focus on these reductions, because I think this is one of the most important topics for B1 learners who want to understand natural speech. Reductions happen when native speakers combine or shorten common words, because they appear together so often. Let's go through the most important ones together. The first one is gonna, which replaces going to. For example, instead of saying, "I am going to call you later," a native speaker will almost always say, "I'm going to call you later." Repeat, I'm going to call you later. The second one is wanna, which replaces want to. Instead of, do you want to go to the movies? You'll hear, do you want to go to the movies? Repeat. Do you want to go to the movies? The third one is gotta, which replaces got to or have got to, meaning have to or must. Instead of, I have to go now, you'll hear, I gotta go now. Repeat. I gotta go now. The fourth one is kinda, which replaces kind of, often used to soften a statement. Instead of, I am kind of tired, you'll hear, I'm kinda tired. Repeat. I'm kinda tired. The fifth one is hafta, which replaces have to. Instead of, I have to finish this today, you'll hear, I have to finish this today. Repeat. I have to finish this today. There are more of these, like shoulda for should have, coulda for could have, and woulda for would have. For example, I should have called her back becomes I should have called her back. Repeat. I should have called her back. Now, here's the important thing. You don't need to use all of these reductions yourself when you speak, especially if you're still building your confidence. It's totally fine to speak a little more formally. But you absolutely need to be able to recognize these reductions when you hear them, because they appear constantly in real conversations, in movies, in podcasts, and in everyday interactions. If you don't train your ear to catch these, you'll feel lost even when you actually know the vocabulary being used. Let's talk about linking now, because this is another huge reason why natural speech sounds so different from textbook speech. Linking happens when the sound at the end of one word connects smoothly to the sound at the beginning of the next word. For example, the phrase an apple is often pronounced like a napple, because the N sound from an connects directly to the A sound of apple. Repeat, an apple. Another example, turn it off, often sounds like turn it off when spoken quickly, because the words blend together. Repeat, turn it off. Or think about the common phrase, what are you doing? In natural fast speech, this often sounds like what you doing. The words what and are and you blend together into something completely different from how they look when written. Repeat. What you doing? This is exactly why reading English and listening to English can feel like two completely different skills. When you read, every word is separated clearly. When you listen, words blend, disappear, and transform based on the rhythm and speed of natural conversation. Now let's talk about filler words, because these are everywhere in natural speech, and they can be really confusing for learners, because filler words don't always have a clear meaning. They're more about rhythm, thinking time, and connection between speakers. The most common ones you'll hear are, like, you know, I mean, so, well, and actually. Let's look at some examples. Imagine someone telling a story and saying, so, like, I was walking to work, and I mean, it was raining so hard, I didn't even have an umbrella. Notice how, like, I mean, and don't add specific information. They just give the speaker time to think, and they make the story feel more natural and conversational. Repeat. So, like, I was walking to work, and I mean, it was raining so hard. I didn't even have an umbrella. Another really common filler is actually, which is often used to correct or add surprising information. For example, I thought the meeting was at 3, but actually, it got moved to 4. Repeat. I thought the meeting was at 3, but actually, it got moved to 4. And well is often used at the beginning of a sentence when someone is thinking, or slightly disagreeing, or softening bad news. For example, well, I'm not sure that's the best idea. Repeat. Well, I'm not sure that's the best idea. Understanding these filler words is huge for your listening comprehension, because once you recognize that words like like, and you know don't need to be translated or analyzed, you can relax and focus on the actual meaning of the sentence instead of getting stuck trying to understand every single word. Let's move into another real conversation now. This time, a phone call about scheduling a meeting, because this is such a common situation in both work and daily life. Imagine two coworkers on the phone. One says, "Hey, do you have a few minutes tomorrow to go over the project?" Repeat. Do you have a few minutes tomorrow to go over the project? The other person responds, "Yeah, actually, mornings work best for me. Is like 10, okay?" Notice, is like 10 okay here. This is casual speech. A more textbook version would say, would 10 o'clock be acceptable? But almost nobody talks that formally in daily conversation. Repeat. Is like 10 okay? Then the first person says, "Yeah, that works. I'll shoot you a calendar invite." Shoot you a calendar invite means send you a calendar invite quickly. Native speakers love using casual verbs like shoot instead of send in informal contexts. Repeat. I'll shoot you a calendar invite. And the conversation might end with, "Sounds good. Talk soon." Short, friendly, efficient. Exactly how real people end conversations. Repeat. Sounds good. Talk soon. I want you to notice something about all of these conversations we've looked at so far. None of them are complicated in terms of vocabulary. A B1 learner already knows words like coffee, weekend, directions, and meeting. The difficulty isn't the vocabulary, it's the natural rhythm, the reductions, the fillers, and the casual expressions layered on top of simple words. This is really encouraging news for you, because it means you don't necessarily need thousands of new vocabulary words to understand native speakers better. You need exposure to how those words are actually used and pronounced in real conversation. Let's talk about phrasal verbs for a moment, because these are another huge part of natural English that trips up learners constantly. A phrasal verb is a verb combined with one or two small words, like up, out, off, or on. And together, they create a meaning that's often completely different from the original verb. For example, look up means to search for information, as in, I'll look up the address online. Repeat. I'll look up the address online. Run into means to meet someone unexpectedly, as in, I ran into my old teacher at the grocery store. Repeat. I ran into my old teacher at the grocery store. Figure out means to understand or solve something, as in, I finally figured out how to fix my printer. Repeat. I finally figured out how to fix my printer. Give up means to stop trying, as in, don't give up. You're almost done. Repeat. Don't give up. You're almost done. Get along means to have a good relationship with someone, as in, my sister and I get along really well. Repeat. My sister and I get along really well. Phrasal verbs are everywhere in natural conversation, way more common than their formal, single-word equivalents. For example, native speakers say give up way more often than surrender, and they say figure out way more often than comprehend. If you want to understand real English, learning common phrasal verbs is honestly one of the best investments you can make with your study time. Now, let's talk about something really practical: how you can actually train your listening skills. Using everything we've talked about today, I want to give you a few strategies, and I'll explain each one in detail so you understand exactly why it works. The first strategy is called shadowing. This means listening to a short piece of natural audio, maybe just one sentence at a time, and then repeating it out loud immediately, trying to copy the speed, the rhythm, and the pronunciation as closely as possible. This is incredibly powerful because it trains your mouth and your ear at the same time. When you shadow, you're not just understanding the words, you're feeling the natural rhythm of the language in your own body. And that makes it much easier to recognize that same rhythm when you hear it again later. The second strategy is listening without subtitles first, and then listening again with subtitles. This might feel uncomfortable at first, because you probably won't understand everything the first time, and that's completely fine. The goal of the first listen is just to get used to the sound, the rhythm, and the general topic. Then, on your second listen, with subtitles, you can connect the sounds you heard to the actual words and meanings. This process trains your brain to work the way it will need to work in a real conversation, where you obviously don't have subtitles helping you. The third strategy is focusing on phrases instead of individual words. When you listen to natural English, try not to translate word by word in your head, because natural speech moves too fast for that. And by the time you translate one word, you'll miss the next 5. Instead, try to catch whole phrases and chunks of meaning, like gonna go, or kind of tired, or figure it out. Your brain will start to recognize these chunks as single units over time, the same way native speakers do. The fourth strategy is repeated listening. Choose a short piece of audio, maybe just 30 seconds or 1 minute long, and listen to it multiple times over several days. The first time, you might understand 30%. The second time, maybe 50%. By the 5th or 6th time, you might understand almost everything. This repetition builds real, lasting listening skills, much more effectively than listening to something once and moving on. And the fifth strategy, which I think is honestly the most fun, is choosing content you actually enjoy. If you love cooking, listen to English cooking videos. If you love sports, listen to English sports commentary. If you love true crime stories, listen to English true crime podcasts. When you're genuinely interested in the topic, your brain works harder to understand it, and the whole process feels less like studying and more like enjoying something you already love, just in a different language. Now, let's go through a few more natural conversation examples, because I really want to give you as much real practice as possible in this episode. Let's imagine a conversation between two friends talking about plans for the evening. One friend says, "Hey, Are we still on for tonight? Still on for means, is the plan still happening? Repeat. Are we still on for tonight? The other friend responds, yeah, for sure. What time were you thinking? Repeat. Yeah, for sure. What time were you thinking? The first friend says, maybe around 7. I gotta finish up some stuff at work first. Finish up is another phrasal verb, meaning to complete something. Repeat. I gotta finish up some stuff at work first. The second friend says, no worries. Take your time. Just text me when you're heading out. No worries is a super casual, friendly way of saying, that's fine. Heading out means leaving. Repeat. No worries. Take your time. Just text me when you're heading out. Let's look at another one. A conversation at a restaurant. The server approaches the table and says, hey folks, are you ready to order? Or do you need a few more minutes? Repeat. Are you ready to order? Or do you need a few more minutes? A customer responds, I think we're good. Can I get the grilled chicken? And could you do the fries instead of the salad? I think we're good is a really common way to say we're ready, or that's enough. And you'll hear it constantly in restaurants, stores, and casual conversations. Repeat. I think we're good. The server might say, yeah, of course. Not a problem at all. Repeat. Yeah, of course. Not a problem at all. Let's try one more. A conversation between two people who haven't seen each other in a while. One says, oh my gosh, it's been forever. How have you been? Repeat. Oh my gosh, it's been forever. How have you been? The other person responds, I know. Right. It's been way too long. I've been good. Just super busy with work. It's been way too long. And super busy are both extremely common natural expressions. Repeat. I've been good. Just super busy with work. I hope you're noticing something really important throughout all of these examples. Real English conversations are full of short responses, casual expressions, filler words, and natural rhythm. And honestly, this is actually good news for you as a learner, because it means real conversations often use simpler grammar than what you might practice in a formal writing class. The challenge isn't complicated grammar, it's speed, rhythm, and familiarity with these casual patterns. Let's talk a little bit about intonation now, because this is something that often gets ignored in traditional English classes, but it's incredibly important for understanding meaning in real conversations. In English, rising intonation at the end of a sentence usually signals a question, or sometimes uncertainty or a soft, friendly tone. Falling intonation usually signals a statement, a command, or certainty. For example, if someone says, you're coming, right? With rising intonation on right, they're checking information and expecting an answer. Repeat. You're coming, right? But if someone says, you're coming with falling intonation, it sounds much more like a confident statement or even a light command. Learning to hear these differences in tone will help you understand not just what someone is saying, but how they feel about what they're saying. Whether they're asking, confirming, doubting, or insisting. Let's also talk about stress patterns in sentences. Because native English speakers naturally stress the most important words in a sentence, while other words, especially small grammar words like the, a, is, and of, get spoken very quickly and quietly. almost swallowed into the rhythm of the sentence. For example, in the sentence, "I really need to talk to you," a native speaker will stress really, need, and talk, while words like to and you might almost blend together quickly. Repeat. I really need to talk to you. This uneven stress pattern is actually one of the biggest reasons natural English sounds so different from textbook English, because textbook audio often gives equal weight to every single word, which sounds clear but completely unnatural. Now let's talk about something really important for your confidence as a learner. I want you to understand that even advanced English learners, and honestly, even native speakers learning a second language, struggle with natural speech at first. This isn't a sign that something is wrong with your English level. It's simply a completely different skill from reading or studying grammar rules. Listening comprehension for natural speech takes time, repeated exposure, and patience. And every single person who speaks English fluently today went through this exact same process of gradually training their ear. I also want to encourage you to not be afraid of not understanding everything. In real conversations, even native speakers don't always understand 100% of what they hear, especially in noisy environments, or with unfamiliar accents, or with fast speakers. Native speakers ask for clarification all the time. They say things like, "Sorry, what was that?" Or, "Could you say that again?" Or, "Wait, what do you mean?" These are all completely normal, natural parts of real communication. Repeat. Sorry. What was that? Let's practice a few more useful clarification phrases together, because these will genuinely help you in real conversations, even when you don't understand everything perfectly. If you didn't catch what someone said, you can say, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Repeat. Sorry. Could you repeat that? If you understood the words but not the meaning, you can say, "Sorry. What do you mean by that?" Repeat. Sorry. What do you mean by that? If someone is speaking too fast for you, you can say, "Would you mind speaking a little slower?" Repeat. Would you mind speaking a little slower? And if you just need a moment to think, you can say, "Give me 1 second. Let me think about that." Repeat. Give me 1 second. Let me think about that. These phrases are incredibly useful because they let you stay in the conversation naturally, without panicking or freezing up when you don't understand something immediately. Real communication is a two-way process, and asking for clarification is a completely normal, expected part of speaking any language, even for native speakers. Let's go back to real conversation practice one more time, because I want to give you a slightly longer example, something closer to what a real, natural conversation actually sounds like from start to finish. Imagine two neighbors talking outside their apartment building. One says, "Hey, how's it going? Haven't seen you in a while." Repeat. "Hey, how's it going? Haven't seen you in a while." The other responds, "Good, good. Just been crazy busy. How about you? Everything good with you?" Repeat. "Just been crazy busy. How about you? Everything good with you?" The first neighbor says, "Yeah, can't complain. Hey, by the way, did you happen to see a package out here earlier? I'm expecting something." "Can't complain" is a really casual, friendly way of saying things are fine. "By the way" is used to introduce a new topic naturally into the conversation. Repeat. Did you happen to see a package out here earlier? The second neighbor responds, Oh yeah, actually. I think I saw the delivery guy drop something off around noon. It might still be by the front desk. Repeat. I think I saw the delivery guy drop something off around noon. The first neighbor says, Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. That's a relief. I've been waiting on that for days. That's a relief expresses feeling relaxed after worry. Been waiting on is a common natural way of saying have been waiting for. Repeat. That's a relief. I've been waiting on that for days. Notice how natural, smooth, and connected this whole conversation feels. There's no complicated vocabulary here at all, but there's a huge amount of natural rhythm, casual expressions, and smooth transitions between ideas. Exactly the kind of English you'll hear constantly once you start paying attention to real conversations around you. Now, I want to shift a little bit and talk about accents, because this is something that confuses a lot of learners, especially at the B1 level. English is spoken very differently depending on the country and even the region within a country. American English, British English, Australian English, Canadian English, Irish English, and many other varieties all have different pronunciation patterns, different vocabulary choices, and sometimes even different grammar habits. This can feel overwhelming. But here's the truth. You don't need to master every accent perfectly. You just need enough exposure to different accents that your brain becomes flexible and adaptable. Think about it this way. Even native English speakers sometimes struggle to understand accents very different from their own the first time they hear them. A person from New York might need a moment to adjust to a strong Scottish accent. And that's completely normal. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is flexibility and comfort with variety. The more different types of natural English you expose yourself to, different speakers, different accents, different speeds, the more adaptable and confident your listening skills will become. Over time. Let's talk about one more really useful concept: connected speech across common expressions. There are certain phrases in English that are so common, they've almost become their own single sound in fast speech. For example, I don't know is often pronounced like I don't know, all blended together. Repeat. I don't know. Give me is often pronounced like gimme. Repeat. Gimme a second. Let me is often pronounced like lemme. Repeat. Let me check that for you. What did you is often pronounced like what'ja, as in what'ja do this weekend? Repeat. What'ja do this weekend? These blended forms can feel almost like a completely different language when you first hear them, especially if you learned English primarily through reading and writing. But once you recognize these common patterns, you'll start hearing them everywhere. In movies, in podcasts, in real conversations. And honestly, once your ear adjusts, they'll start to feel just as normal and understandable as any other part of English. I want to take a moment now to talk about mindset, because I really believe mindset plays a huge role in language learning success. A lot of learners feel frustrated or even embarrassed when they can't understand natural speech immediately, especially compared to how well they can read or write in English. But I want you to reframe this completely. Listening to natural speech is genuinely one of the hardest skills in any language. Because it requires real-time processing, with no ability to pause, reread, or look up a word in the moment. Every single person who becomes fluent in listening comprehension gets there through consistent, patient exposure over time, not through some magic shortcut. So instead of feeling discouraged when you don't understand something, try to feel curious instead. Ask yourself, what just happened there? What expression was that? Why did that sound different from what I expected? This curious mindset transforms confusion into a learning opportunity, instead of a source of frustration. And honestly, that shift in mindset alone can make a huge difference in how enjoyable and sustainable your English learning journey feels. Let's do one final extended practice section together before we wrap up today's episode. Because I want to leave you with as much useful material as possible, let's imagine a slightly longer, natural conversation between two friends planning a weekend trip. One friend says, "Okay, so I was thinking, what if we headed out early Saturday, like maybe around 7, so we can beat the traffic?" Headed out means left or departed. Beat the traffic means avoid heavy traffic by leaving early. Repeat. What if we headed out early Saturday so we can beat the traffic? The other friend responds, 7 works for me. Honestly, the earlier the better. I hate sitting in traffic for hours. Repeat. Honestly, the earlier the better. I hate sitting in traffic for hours. The first friend continues. Totally agree. Oh, and I looked up the weather. It's supposed to be pretty nice all weekend, so we should be good for the hike. Looked up means searched for information. Supposed to be is used to describe expected or predicted conditions. Repeat. I looked up the weather. It's supposed to be pretty nice all weekend. The second friend says, Perfect. I'll pack some snacks then. Do you want to split the gas money, or should we just figure it out later? Repeat. Do you want to split the gas money, or should we just figure it out later? The first friend responds, Let's just figure it out later. Honestly, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal is an extremely common expression meaning something isn't important or worth worrying about. Repeat. Honestly, it's not a big deal. Notice throughout this entire conversation, there's not a single complicated word. Every single word here is something a B1 learner already knows. The difficulty, once again, comes entirely from the natural rhythm, the phrasal verbs, the casual expressions, and the smooth, connected flow of real conversation. This is exactly why I keep saying, over and over, that natural listening comprehension is a separate skill from vocabulary knowledge, and it's a skill you can absolutely build with consistent, focused practice. Before we finish today, I want to give you a simple challenge, something you can start doing this week to practice everything we talked about in this episode. Choose one short piece of natural English audio, maybe a 1-minute clip from a podcast, a movie scene, or even a video from social media. Listen to it once without any subtitles, and just notice how much you understand. Then listen again with subtitles, and pay close attention to any reductions, fillers, or phrasal verbs you missed the first time. Then, try shadowing that same clip, repeating it out loud, copying the rhythm and pronunciation as closely as you can. Do this with the same short clip for about 5 days in a row, and I promise you, by the fifth day. Your understanding and your pronunciation of that piece will feel completely different from your very first listen. This kind of focused, repeated practice, even just 5 or 10 minutes a day, builds real listening skills far more effectively than passively listening to hours of content without paying close attention. Consistency really is the key here. Small, focused sessions, repeated regularly, will get you so much further than occasional long study sessions. I want to thank you so much for spending this time with me today on English in Fluency. I really hope this episode gave you some practical tools, real examples, and honestly, a little bit of encouragement too. Because learning to understand natural English is a journey. And every single person listening to this podcast right now is somewhere along that journey, myself included, since I remember exactly how overwhelming natural speech felt when I was first building my own listening skills in a new language. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to share it with a friend who's also learning English, someone who might need a little encouragement today. And if you have topics you'd like me to cover in future episodes, situations you find confusing, expressions you've heard that you didn't understand, or accents you'd like help with, please reach out and let me know. Because this podcast is really built around what helps you the most. Until next time, keep listening, keep practicing, and remember, every single conversation you don't fully understand today is just one more step toward the conversation you will understand tomorrow. This has been Alex, and this is English in Fluency. Talk to you soon. Now, before we wrap up completely, I actually want to keep going a little longer today. Because I got so many messages this week from listeners asking me to cover a few more real-life situations. So let's dive into some new scenarios together, and we'll keep using that same approach, breaking things down piece by piece, with plenty of chances for you to repeat after me. Let's start with a job interview, because this is such a nerve-wracking situation for a lot of English learners. And honestly, even native speakers get nervous during interviews. Imagine an interviewer starting things off by saying, "So, thanks so much for coming in today. Why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself?" Notice, "Why don't you?" which is a really common, friendly way of making a request or giving an instruction. Much softer than saying, "Please tell me about yourself." Repeat. "Why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself?" The candidate might respond, "Sure. So, I've been working in marketing for about 5 years now, and I'm really passionate about brand strategy." Repeat. "I've been working in marketing for about 5 years now." The interviewer continues. "That's great. So what would you say is your biggest strength, and maybe an area you're looking to grow in?" Repeat. "What would you say is your biggest strength, and maybe an area you're looking to grow in?" The candidate answers, "I'd say my biggest strength is definitely communication. I'm pretty good at breaking down complex ideas for people who aren't familiar with the topic. And as for growth, I'd say I'm still working on delegating tasks. I tend to want to do everything myself." Breaking down here means explaining something complex in a simple way. Working on means actively trying to improve something. Repeat. "I'm still working on delegating tasks. Notice how natural and conversational this entire interview sounds, even though it's a somewhat formal professional situation. Real interviews, even in professional settings, still use natural rhythm, contractions, and casual connector phrases like "so," "I'd say," and "that's great." This is really important to understand, because a lot of learners assume professional English needs to sound stiff and overly formal. But in reality, natural, relaxed English is appropriate in most professional settings in English-speaking countries, especially in the United States. Let's look at another situation, a doctor's visit, because understanding medical conversations in English can feel really stressful if you're not prepared for the natural rhythm of how doctors and patients actually talk. Imagine a doctor saying, "So, what's been going on? What brings you in today?" What brings you in is a common, natural way doctors ask why you're visiting. Repeat. What's been going on? What brings you in today? The patient responds, "I've just been feeling kind of off the past few days, like a little dizzy, and my stomach's been bothering me." Feeling kind of off is a really common, casual way to describe not feeling well without being specific. Repeat. "I've just been feeling kind of off the past few days," the doctor asks. "Okay. And when you say dizzy, is it more like the room's spinning, or more like you feel lightheaded?" Repeat. "Okay. And when you say dizzy, is it more like the room's spinning, or more like you feel lightheaded?" The patient answers, "I'd say more lightheaded, especially when I stand up too fast." Repeat. "I'd say more lightheaded, especially when I stand up too fast." Notice again, this conversation uses completely natural, everyday vocabulary. Nothing overly medical or complicated. Just simple words connected in a smooth, natural, conversational way. This is honestly one of the most encouraging things I can tell you as a B1 learner. Most real-life conversations, even in professional or medical settings, rely far more on simple, everyday vocabulary than complicated, specialized words. Let's talk about texting language now. Because even though this podcast focuses on spoken English, so much of casual to spoken style has actually influenced how people write text messages too. And sometimes people even read these messages out loud in natural speech. Imagine someone reading a text message out loud to a friend, saying, "Okay, so she just texted. OMW, running like 10 minutes late. So sorry." OMW stands for "on my way." And when people read texting abbreviations out loud, they often just say the full phrase naturally. Repeat. "On my way. Running like 10 minutes late. So sorry." Or imagine someone saying, he texted back, "NP, no rush. See you soon." NP stands for "no problem." Repeat. "No problem. No rush. See you soon." Understanding these abbreviations is useful too, because you'll see them constantly in casual writing, in social media, and in text messages from English-speaking friends or coworkers. Some of the most common ones include BTW for "by the way," IDK for "I don't know," TBH for "to be honest," and LOL for expressing laughter or amusement. Let's move to another really common natural situation, talking about sports, because sports commentary and casual sports conversations are absolutely full of natural, fast-paced, idiomatic English. Imagine two friends watching a game together, and one says, "Oh, come on. That was such an easy shot. How'd he miss that?" Repeat. "Oh, come on. That was such an easy shot. How'd he miss that?" The other friend responds, I know. Right. He's been kind of off his game the whole season, honestly. Off his game means not performing as well as usual. Repeat. I know. Right. He's been kind of off his game the whole season, honestly. The first friend says, yeah, for sure. But hey, at least they're still in it. Plenty of time left. Still in it means still having a chance to win. Repeat. Yeah, for sure. But hey, at least they're still in it. Plenty of time left. Sports conversations are a great, low-pressure way to practice natural listening. Because the vocabulary repeats constantly across games, and the emotional, casual tone of sports talk mirrors a lot of other natural, informal English conversations you'll encounter in daily life. Let's talk about one more really common, natural situation. A family dinner conversation. Because family conversations are often some of the fastest, most overlapping, and most casual English you'll ever hear, full of interruptions, inside jokes, and quick, connected speech. Imagine a parent asking, so how was school today? Anything interesting happen? Repeat. So how was school today? Anything interesting happen? A teenager responds, not really. Same old, same old. Oh, wait. Actually, we found out the trip got moved to next month. Same old is a really common, casual expression meaning nothing new or different happened. Repeat. Not really. Same old. Oh, wait. Actually, we found out the trip got moved to next month. The parent asks, oh, really? Why'd they move it? Repeat. Oh, really? Why'd they move it? The teenager answers, I think something about the weather. I wasn't really paying attention, to be honest. To be honest is another extremely common filler phrase used to soften or introduce a slightly personal or honest opinion. Repeat. I think something about the weather. I wasn't really paying attention, to be honest. Family conversations like this one move quickly, with a lot of casual shortcuts and shared understanding between speakers. And honestly, this kind of fast, overlapping conversation is often one of the hardest types of natural speech to follow, even for intermediate and sometimes advanced learners. So don't worry if these situations feel especially challenging at first. Now, I want to spend some time talking about something a lot of learners ask me about, which is how to deal with fast speakers specifically. Because speed really is one of the biggest challenges in natural listening comprehension. Here's something really important to understand. Fast speech isn't actually about pronouncing more words in the same amount of time the way you might think. It's mostly about reducing and connecting sounds even more aggressively than normal conversational speech. This means that even fast speakers are usually saying the exact same reductions and linking patterns we've already talked about today, just with even less space between them. This is actually good news, because it means the skills you're building today, recognizing reductions like gonna and wanna, recognizing linking sounds, recognizing filler words. These skills directly transfer to understanding faster speech too. The patterns don't change. They just get compressed even more tightly together. So the more comfortable you become with normal conversational speed, the more naturally your brain will adapt to faster speech over time as well. I also want to talk about something called chunking, which is a really powerful listening strategy. Instead of trying to process a sentence word by word, Native speakers naturally group words into meaningful chunks, and as a learner, training yourself to recognize these chunks can dramatically improve your listening speed and comprehension. For example, instead of hearing I am going to the store, a fluent listener processes this as two simple chunks. I'm going to and the store. Repeat. I'm going to the store. Or take a longer example. What do you think about maybe grabbing dinner later? A fluent listener processes this as chunks like, what do you think about? Maybe grabbing dinner. And later. Rather than as 6 or 7 individual words. Repeat. What do you think about maybe grabbing dinner later? Training yourself to recognize common chunks, common phrases that appear together again and again, is honestly one of the fastest ways to improve your real-time listening comprehension. Because your brain starts recognizing entire chunks instantly, the same way it recognizes individual words, instead of having to process every single word separately. Let's talk about another extremely useful concept, contrastive stress, which is when a speaker emphasizes a specific word in a sentence to highlight contrast or correct a misunderstanding. For example, imagine someone says, I didn't say she was lazy. I said she was busy. Notice how the words lazy and busy would naturally be stressed strongly in this sentence, because the speaker is contrasting these two specific words. Repeat. I didn't say she was lazy. I said she was busy. Or imagine someone clarifying. I meant Tuesday, not Thursday. The words Tuesday and Thursday would be strongly stressed here, since the whole point of the sentence is highlighting that specific contrast. Repeat. I meant Tuesday, not Thursday. Learning to listen for this kind of stress pattern helps you catch important corrections and clarifications in real conversations, even when the rest of the sentence is spoken quickly or casually. I want to spend a little time now talking about emotional tone in natural speech, because understanding not just what someone says, but how they feel while saying it, is a huge part of real communication. Sarcasm, for example, is incredibly common in natural English, especially in American and British casual conversation. And it can be really confusing for learners, because sarcasm often means the exact opposite of what the words literally say. For example, imagine someone spilling coffee all over their shirt right before an important meeting, and saying, "Oh, great. This is exactly what I needed today." The words say great and exactly what I needed. But the tone and the situation make it completely clear that the person actually means the opposite, that this is a frustrating, unwanted situation. Repeat. Oh, great. This is exactly what I needed today. Recognizing sarcasm takes time and lots of exposure because it depends heavily on tone of voice and context, not just the words themselves. But the more natural conversations you listen to, the more naturally you'll start picking up on these emotional cues. Let's also talk about excitement and enthusiasm in natural speech, because this often comes with really specific vocal patterns too. Faster speech, higher pitch, and stretched out vowels for emphasis. For example, imagine someone saying, "Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. I am so happy for you." Notice how a word like so might be stretched out longer than usual, almost like so happy, to emphasize genuine excitement. Repeat. Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. I am so happy for you. On the other hand, Disappointment or sympathy often comes with slower speech, lower pitch, and softer tone. For example, "Oh no, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's tough." Repeat. "Oh no, I'm really sorry to hear that. That's tough." Learning to recognize these emotional and tonal patterns will help you understand not just the literal content of a conversation, but the deeper meaning and emotional context behind it, which is honestly a huge part of truly natural communication. Let's go through one more extended, natural conversation example together before we really wrap things up today, because I want to give you one final, longer piece of listening practice. Let's imagine a conversation between two co-workers grabbing lunch together. One says, "Hey, you hungry? Want to grab something quick?" Repeat. "Hey, you hungry? Want to grab something quick?" The other responds, "Yeah, definitely. I'm starving, honestly. Didn't really get a chance to eat breakfast." Starving is a common, exaggerated way of saying very hungry. Repeat. "Yeah, definitely. I'm starving, honestly. Didn't really get a chance to eat breakfast." The first coworker suggests, "There's that new sandwich place around the corner. Want to check it out?" Check it out means to try or explore something new. Repeat. "There's that new sandwich place around the corner. Want to check it out?" The second coworker responds, "Sure, sounds good. As long as it's quick. I've got a call in like 45 minutes. Repeat. "Sure, sounds good. As long as it's quick. I've got a call in like 45 minutes. They arrive, and the first coworker says, "Okay, so what looks good to you?" Repeat. "Okay, so what looks good to you?" The second coworker says, "Honestly, I might just get whatever you're getting. I can never decide at new places." Repeat. "Honestly, I might just get whatever you're getting. I can never decide at new places." The first coworker laughs and says, "Ha, fair enough. I think I'm leaning towards the turkey club." Leaning towards means slightly preferring one option. Repeat. "Ha, fair enough. I think I'm leaning towards the turkey club." Notice again, throughout this entire conversation, completely simple, everyday vocabulary, but a huge amount of natural rhythm, contractions, filler words, and casual expressions layered smoothly throughout. This really is the heart of natural spoken English. Simple words, combined in fast, connected, emotionally expressive ways. I want to close today's extended episode with a few final, practical thoughts. First, remember that understanding natural English is absolutely a learnable skill, not some kind of fixed talent that only certain people have. Every single fluent listener you've ever admired started exactly where you are right now, confused by contractions, overwhelmed by speed, and unfamiliar with casual expressions. The difference between where you are now and where you want to be is simply consistent, focused exposure over time. Second, remember that mistakes and confusion are completely normal parts of this process. You don't need to understand 100% of every conversation to be making real progress. Understanding 60% today and 70% next month, and 80% in 6 months. That steady progress is exactly what real language learning looks like, even though it can feel slow in the moment. Third, try to build small, consistent listening habits into your daily routine. Even just 10 or 15 minutes a day of focused, natural English listening using the strategies we talked about today: shadowing, chunking, repeated listening, and choosing content you genuinely enjoy. These small, consistent habits, repeated over weeks and months, build real, lasting fluency far more effectively than occasional, intense study sessions. And finally, be patient and kind to yourself throughout this process. Learning to understand natural, fast, casual English is genuinely one of the hardest parts of language learning. And the fact that you're here, listening to this entire episode, actively working on this skill, already puts you ahead of so many learners who avoid natural content because it feels too difficult. Keep showing up, keep listening, keep practicing, and I promise you, the progress will come, even when it doesn't always feel like it in the moment. Thank you again so much for spending this time with me today on English in Fluency. This episode covered a huge amount of ground: real conversations, reductions, linking, filler words, phrasal verbs, intonation, stress patterns, sarcasm, emotional tone, and plenty of practical listening strategies you can start using today. I really hope you found this helpful. And I really hope you feel just a little more confident and prepared the next time you step into a real conversation in English. If this episode helped you, please consider sharing it with someone else who's on this same journey, learning to understand real, natural English. And as always, if you have questions, topics you'd like covered, or specific conversations you'd love broken down, like we did today, please reach out and let me know. Because this show is built around helping you specifically. This has been Alex, and this is English in Fluency, the podcast for B1 learners who want to understand real people speaking naturally. Thanks so much for listening. Take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Okay, I actually decided to keep this episode going a bit longer than usual, because there's still so much good material I want to share with you, and I've been getting so many requests for this specific episode. So let's keep building on everything we've covered so far, with a few more important topics. Let's talk about numbers and money in natural speech, because this is honestly a really practical, everyday area where natural English sounds very different from how numbers are written formally. Imagine someone saying, "That'll be $23.50, meaning $23.50. Notice how natural speech drops the word dollars and cents completely in casual contexts, and just says the numbers directly. Repeat, "That'll be $23.50. Or imagine someone saying, "I picked it up for like $40. Bucks is an extremely common, casual word for dollars. Repeat, "I picked it up for like $40. Time is another area where natural speech uses shortcuts constantly. Instead of saying, "It is currently 3:45 in the afternoon," a native speaker will almost always say something like, "It's like 3:45. Repeat, "It's like 3:45. Or, for example, 6:30 instead of 6:30, although both are common depending on the region and the speaker. Repeat, 6:30. And when talking about approximate time, native speakers use like, around, ish, and about constantly. For example, "I'll be there around 7-ish. Ish attached to a number means approximately that time. Repeat, "I'll be there around 7-ish. These small, practical patterns around numbers, money, and time appear constantly in daily conversations, shopping, ordering food, scheduling plans. And if you're not expecting these casual shortcuts, they can catch you off guard, even when you know the actual vocabulary for numbers perfectly well. Let's talk now about the difference between listening to news broadcasts and listening to casual conversation. Because these are honestly almost like two different registers of the same language. News broadcasters typically speak more slowly, more clearly, with more formal vocabulary, and with very few reductions or filler words, because their job is to communicate information as clearly as possible to a wide audience. This is actually why a lot of learners find news broadcasts easier to understand than casual conversation, even though the vocabulary in news broadcasts is sometimes more advanced. For example, a news anchor might say, "Officials confirmed today that the new policy will take effect at the beginning of next month." This sentence is grammatically complete, clearly pronounced, with no reductions or fillers at all. Repeat. Officials confirmed today that the new policy will take effect at the beginning of next month. Compare that to how a casual conversation might express the exact same idea. So apparently, that new rule's kicking in next month. Kicking in is a casual phrasal verb meaning starting to take effect. Notice how much shorter, more casual, and more compressed this version is. Repeat. So apparently, that new rule's kicking in next month. Both of these sentences communicate the same basic information, but they represent completely different registers of English. And, honestly, as a learner, it's valuable to practice both. News and formal broadcasts help you build clear, structured comprehension and formal vocabulary, while casual conversations, podcasts like this one, and everyday interactions help you build the natural, fast, reduced comprehension you need for real daily life. Let's talk about workplace emails and messages being read aloud, because this happens surprisingly often in professional settings. Someone reading a message out loud to a coworker. Imagine someone saying, "Okay, so she just sent over the updated file. Says here she wants feedback by end of day." Sent over means sent to someone, commonly used in workplace contexts. End of day is an extremely common phrase, meaning before the workday finishes. Repeat. Okay, so she just sent over the updated file. Says here she wants feedback by end of day. Or, imagine. He's asking if we can push the deadline back a few days. Push back here means to delay or postpone. Repeat. He's asking if we can push the deadline back a few days. These workplace expressions appear constantly in professional English. And honestly, understanding them naturally, without translating word by word, will make a huge difference in how comfortable and confident you feel in professional or academic English environments. Let's talk about regional differences a little more, because I promised earlier we'd come back to this topic. American English, which is what I mostly use here on this podcast since I'm from the United States, has some really distinctive patterns compared to British English. For example, Americans often say gonna, wanna, and gotta extremely frequently in casual speech. And Americans tend to flatten certain vowel sounds and add a stronger R sound at the end of words like car or water. British English, on the other hand, often drops that ending R sound completely. So car sounds more like ta, And certain vowel sounds are pronounced quite differently as well. Vocabulary differences are common too. For example, Americans say apartment, while British speakers often say flat. Americans say elevator. British speakers say lift. Americans say vacation. British speakers say holiday. None of these differences are wrong. They're simply different natural varieties of the same language. And exposure to multiple varieties, even if you focus mainly on one, will make your overall listening skills stronger and more adaptable. Australian English adds even more unique patterns, distinctive vowel sounds, unique slang words like arvo for afternoon or brekkie for breakfast, and a generally relaxed, friendly conversational tone. Canadian English often blends American and British patterns, with its own unique expressions too, like ending sentences with "a" as a friendly, casual check-in, similar to saying "right" or "you know" at the end of a sentence. Repeat. It's pretty cold out today. Eh? I really want to encourage you, as you continue your English learning journey, to expose yourself to a variety of these different accents and regional styles over time, not to master all of them perfectly, but simply to build the flexibility and confidence to understand a wide range of natural English speakers, wherever you might encounter them in your life, travel, work, or friendships. Now let's shift gears a little and answer a few listener questions, because I collected some really great questions this week, and I think answering them here will help reinforce everything we've talked about today. The first question comes from a listener who asked, "How long does it usually take to start understanding natural, fast English?" Honestly, this varies a lot from person to person, depending on how much consistent exposure you're getting, your starting level, and even how similar your native language is to English in terms of rhythm and sound patterns. But, generally speaking, with consistent, focused practice, many learners notice real improvement within a few months, and significant improvement within about a year of regular, intentional listening practice. The key word here really is consistent. Small amounts of focused practice regularly will always outperform occasional, intense study sessions. Another listener asked, "Should I keep using subtitles, or is that a bad habit?" This is such a great question, and honestly, the answer depends on how you use them. Subtitles aren't inherently bad. They become a problem only if you rely on them completely and never challenge yourself to listen without them. I'd recommend the strategy we talked about earlier. Listen first, without subtitles, then listen again with subtitles to fill in the gaps. This combination gives you the best of both worlds. Real listening challenge, plus the support you need to actually learn from what you missed. A third listener asked, "Is it normal to understand a person in real life, but not understand the same accent in a movie?" Yes, completely normal, actually. In real conversations, you have visual cues, facial expressions, gestures, lip movements, and context that all support your understanding. Movies, especially with background music, sound effects, and sometimes stylized or exaggerated speech patterns for dramatic effect, can genuinely be harder to understand than real, face-to-face conversation, even for native speakers sometimes. So don't feel discouraged if movies feel more challenging than real conversations. That's a completely normal experience for learners at every level. Let's do one more full-length natural conversation example before we finally wrap up. Because I want to end today's episode with a really rich, natural piece of listening practice, let's imagine two friends catching up over video call. Since so much of our natural conversation happens virtually these days too. One friend says, "Hey, can you hear me okay? My connection's been kind of spotty today." Spotty here means unreliable or inconsistent. Repeat. "Hey, can you hear me? Okay. My connection's been kind of spotty today." The other friend responds, "Yeah, I can hear you fine. You're coming through clear on my end." Coming through clear means the audio or video quality is good. Repeat. "Yeah, I can hear you fine. You're coming through clear on my end." The first friend says, "Perfect. Okay, so tell me everything. How's the new job going?" Repeat. "Perfect. Okay, so tell me everything. How's the new job going?" The second friend answers, "Honestly, it's been a lot. Like a good kind of a lot. But I'm definitely still finding my footing." Finding my footing means getting comfortable or adjusted to a new situation. Repeat. Honestly, it's been a lot. Like a good kind of a lot. But I'm definitely still finding my footing. The first friend says, "That makes total sense. It always takes a minute to get into the groove of a new place." Get into the groove means to become comfortable and familiar with something. Repeat. That makes total sense. It always takes a minute to get into the groove of a new place. The second friend continues, "Exactly. But everyone's been super welcoming, so that's definitely made things easier." Repeat. Exactly. But everyone's been super welcoming, so that's definitely made things easier. The first friend responds, "That's so good to hear. Seriously, I'm really happy for you." Repeat. That's so good to hear. Seriously. I'm really happy for you. Notice, once again, throughout this entire natural conversation, simple words, casual expressions, contractions, and a warm, friendly, connected rhythm. Exactly the kind of English you'll encounter constantly in your own real relationships and conversations as your English continues to grow and develop. As we really wrap up today's extended episode, I want to leave you with one final, important thought. The goal of understanding natural English isn't about achieving some kind of perfect, complete comprehension where you never miss a single word ever again. Because honestly, that's not even fully realistic. Even for native speakers in certain situations, the real goal is comfort, confidence, and the ability to stay engaged in a conversation, to follow the general meaning, to catch the important details, and to ask for clarification naturally when you need it, without panic, without shutting down, and without feeling like you have to understand every single word perfectly to participate meaningfully. Every single conversation example we broke down together today, ordering coffee, small talk about weekends, asking for directions, phone calls, job interviews, doctor visits, family dinners, video calls with friends, every one of these was full of natural reductions, fillers, phrasal verbs, and casual rhythm. And yet, none of it used complicated vocabulary. This really is the heart of what I want you to take away from today's episode. Understanding natural English isn't primarily about learning more words. It's about training your ear to recognize the words you already know, spoken in the fast, connected, natural way. Real people actually speak them every single day. Thank you again. So, so much for spending this extended episode with me today on English in Fluency. I know this was a longer episode than usual, but I really wanted to give you as much real, practical material as possible. Plenty of examples to repeat, plenty of strategies to practice, and hopefully, plenty of encouragement to keep going on this journey. Remember, progress in listening comprehension happens gradually, through small, consistent exposure over time. And every single episode of Natural English you expose yourself to, including this one, is building your ear, one conversation at a time. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with someone else who's working on their English listening skills too, and feel free to reach out with any questions, topics, or specific situations you'd love for me to break down in a future episode. This has been Alex, and this is English in Fluency, the podcast helping B1 learners understand real people speaking naturally, one episode at a time. Thanks so much for listening today. Take care, and I will talk to you very soon in the next episode. Actually, before I let you go today, I want to squeeze in just one more short bonus segment, because I think this will genuinely help a lot of you. And that's talking about how to handle group conversations. Since group settings add a whole extra layer of difficulty compared to one-on-one conversations. In a group, people talk over each other, they react quickly, they laugh, they interrupt, and the conversation can jump from topic to topic really fast, which can feel overwhelming even for confident learners. Imagine a small group of friends at dinner, and someone says, "Wait, back up. What happened after that?" Back up here means to return to an earlier point in the story. Repeat. Wait, back up. What happened after that? Someone else jumps in and says, "Oh my gosh, right. Okay, so then she totally just walked out. Like, didn't say a word." Repeat. "Oh my gosh, right. Okay, so then she totally just walked out. Like, didn't say a word." A third friend adds, laughing, "No way, that's wild. I would have died." "I would have died" is a common, exaggerated expression, meaning extreme embarrassment or shock. Not literal death at all. Repeat. "No way, that's wild. I would have died." In group settings like this, you honestly don't need to catch every single word from every single speaker. A really useful strategy is to focus on catching the general topic and emotional tone first, and then let specific details fill in naturally as the conversation continues. Group conversations also tend to repeat and clarify information naturally, since multiple people are reacting and asking questions together, which actually gives you more chances to catch information you might have missed the first time around. One more quick tip for group settings. Don't be afraid to ask a simple clarifying question, even in a group. Something like, "Wait, sorry, what happened before that?" is completely normal and welcomed in natural conversation. Groups genuinely don't mind pausing briefly to help someone catch up, and asking shows genuine interest and engagement, rather than confusion. All right, that really is a wrap for today's episode. We covered an enormous amount of ground together, from ordering coffee to group conversations at dinner, and everything in between. Reductions, linking, filler words, phrasal verbs, intonation, emotional tone, regional accents, numbers and time, professional and medical situations, and even sarcasm and excitement. My hope is that you leave this episode with real, practical tools you can start using immediately. And, honestly, with a little more confidence too. Knowing that every single challenge you're facing with natural English is a completely normal part of this journey. One that every fluent speaker before you has walked through as well. Keep listening to real conversations whenever you can. Keep practicing that shadowing technique. Keep chunking phrases instead of individual words. And keep being patient and kind with yourself along the way. This has been Alex. This has been English in Fluency. And I will see you, or rather, I will talk to you, in the very next episode. Take care, everyone, and happy listening. Oh, and actually, one more thing before I really go, because I almost forgot to share this, and I think it might be one of the most useful tips in this entire episode. Keeping a listening journal. This is such a simple idea, but it makes a real difference over time. Every time you listen to something in English, a podcast, a show, a conversation with a friend, just jot down 1 or 2 expressions you heard that you didn't fully understand, or that felt new or interesting to you. You don't need fancy notes, just the expression itself, and maybe a quick guess at what it might mean based on the context. For example, maybe today you write down "kinda off his game," or "no worries," or "figure it out later." Then, once or twice a week, look back over your list. Check the meanings you weren't sure about, and try using a few of those expressions yourself in a sentence. Out loud if you can. This simple habit does 2 really powerful things at once. It trains you to actively notice natural expressions while you're listening, instead of just letting them pass by unnoticed, and it slowly builds your own personal, practical vocabulary bank made up entirely of real, natural English you've actually encountered yourself, not just words from a textbook list. Over weeks and months, this listening journal becomes an incredibly personal, effective study tool, because every single expression in it is something you've genuinely heard used in real, natural context, which makes it so much easier to remember and eventually use naturally yourself. Repeat. Kinda off his game. Repeat. No worries. Repeat. Figure it out later. I really think if you combine this listening journal habit with everything else we talked about today, the shadowing technique, listening first without subtitles, then again with subtitles, focusing on chunks instead of individual words, choosing content you genuinely enjoy, and repeating short clips multiple times, you're going to see real, meaningful progress in your natural listening comprehension. And honestly, probably sooner than you expect. Language learning really is a marathon, not a sprint. And natural listening comprehension specifically takes time, patience, and consistent exposure. But every single conversation you listen to, including this very episode, is quietly training your ear, little by little, even on days when it doesn't feel like much progress is happening at all. Trust that process. Stay consistent. And keep showing up. Okay. Now, this really is a wrap for today. Thank you so much, truly, for spending this time with me, for listening all the way through this extended episode, and for continuing to invest in your own English learning journey. I'm so proud of you for showing up today. And I can't wait to bring you another episode soon. This has been Alex. This has been English in Fluency, the podcast for B1 learners who want to understand real people speaking naturally. Take care of yourselves, keep practicing, and I will talk to you very soon. And hey, one really last thought before I go, because it just came to me and I think it's worth sharing. If today's episode felt like a lot, honestly, that's completely okay. You don't need to remember every single example, every single expression, or every single strategy we covered today, all at once. Pick just one thing that stood out to you. Maybe it's the shadowing technique. Maybe it's the listening journal idea. Maybe it's just the reminder that reductions like gonna and wanna are totally normal and not something to be afraid of. And start there. Small, focused steps, repeated consistently, are what actually build lasting fluency over time, not trying to absorb everything perfectly in a single episode. So if you take away just one thing from today, let it be this: natural English is a skill you can absolutely build, piece by piece, conversation by conversation. And you are already doing the work simply by showing up and listening today. That effort matters, and it adds up more than you realize. Thanks again for being here with me on English in Fluency. I'm really grateful for you, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now. And one final, quick reminder before you go back out into your day. Natural English is everywhere around you already. In songs, in shows, in videos, in overheard conversations at coffee shops, on the street, at work, and every single one of those moments is a free listening lesson, waiting for you to notice it. You don't need a classroom. You don't need perfect conditions. You just need curiosity, a willing ear, and a little bit of patience with yourself. Keep that curiosity alive this week. Notice one natural expression somewhere in your day. Write it down, repeat it out loud, and let that be your small win for today. This has been Alex. This has been English in Fluency. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you very soon. Take care of yourself. Be proud of the progress you're already making. And remember, every fluent English speaker you admire once sat exactly where you're sitting right now, listening closely, practicing patiently, and slowly building an ear for natural, real conversation. One small step at a time, one episode at a time, one conversation at a time, and you are absolutely capable of getting there too. So keep going, keep listening, and I will genuinely talk to you again very soon. Take care. Bye for now. From Alex, and from English in Fluency.